The Culture Pop Podcast is brought to you by the law offices of Jacob Emrani.
Accident or injury, call Jacob Emrani. Call Jacob.
Hey, it's Mase. If you or a friend or loved one is injured in an accident, the first person you should call is my friend Jacob. When I did this, Jacob was great. He helped me by talking through the next steps, which really put my mind at ease. When you're injured in an accident, you got to have an expert. That's why you call Jacob, just like I did. Call Jacob, 844-24-JACOB. That's 844-24-JACOB, or visit calljacob.com.
Call Jacob.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Culture Pop Podcast. I'm Steve Mason along with Sue 𝐁𝐎𝐏𝐑𝐘𝐑𝐒. This is the show where we talk about everything happening in the world of pop culture. Great guest today. It is Christopher Jackson, who you have seen in The Heights. If you are on Broadway, you've seen him in Hamilton. He's just an incredible actor. He's got a new movie out called Boundary Waters. It's on the festival circuit now, and we'll talk to him about that. Now, Sue, I understand that you have joined me as somebody who has been in a Waymo, a driverless taxi. What was this like for you?
It wasn't as scary as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
The odd thing was that it didn't let us off at our exact destination. It stopped on the corner of where we were going. We were going across the street.
Okay.
And I was in San Francisco.
Yep.
And our theory was maybe it didn't want to go up the street, not because it was slanted like all the streets are there.
Yeah,
but
right.
there was there was kind of like parking lot, kind of side parking. It wasn't like conventional street parking. And I talked to my niece who lives in that apartment. She said, nah, that's not it. I've seen it go up that street before. So that was a little disconcerting. What I loved about it was that when you get in the car, you're in control of the music.
Yeah, see, I didn't realize this when I got into the car. We took it in San Francisco also, and it's a fascinating experience. But I didn't know you could control the music. So what'd you play?
Oh, we just changed what it was. I don't even remember what we put on, but it was just horrible music. And we were joking in the car. We had filmed some of it, and we were talking as if there was a real driver in the car.
Right. Right.
How long what time did you get up this morning? Whatever. But the thing that we noticed, because I'm so hyper aware of these Waymos now, that we actually saw one almost get into an accident.
Well, I mean, it's totally possible. The reality is that there is a far higher chance of an accident with real drivers than there are with driverless taxis. I mean, honestly, a Waymo drives better than me. I'm not a great driver. So I'm safer in a Waymo than I am in my own car.
Yeah, because it's programmed to drive safe as far as the speed limit, and they're
right.
They don't,
it doesn't break any laws.
They don't tailgate. They won't. Well, I've actually seen them go in a crosswalk prematurely.
Yeah.
So
wow.
that's a little scary.
Something they need to work on over there at the Waymo.
They need to work on, but it was actually fun to do.
It's a cool experience.
Yeah.
So we talked about the movie Anora on our last show, which is a terrific film starring Mikey Madison, directed by Sean Baker. I think it's going to be a big movie at the Oscars this year. What nugget did you find?
So towards the end of the movie, when they go to the courthouse,
yep,
and they plead their case, the judge, I don't know if you recognize the guy. You probably don't even know who he is. His name is Mike Sergio.
Okay.
Mike Sergio is the guy who parachuted into Shea Stadium during Game 6 of the World Series.
Really?
He was a singer at the Improv. And I remember, watching the game. I was actually in LA doing Star Search when that game happened. And I'm like, God, who's this guy?
Okay, so wait a minute. This is Game 6 in 1980.
86.
86. Yeah, right.
The World Series against the Red Sox.
That was the game, yeah.
That was the game with Buckner. So he parachuted into Shea Stadium. That was the guy who played the judge.
So did he deliver the baseball? Is that the idea? Or did he just randomly do it?
Oh, no, he just randomly.
No, so he's just some guy who jumped into Shea Stadium during Game 6 of the World Series?
Oh, yeah, that was like a famous thing that happened.
Oh, I didn't even know it. I thought when you described it, I thought maybe he's delivering the game ball or something like that.
No. He just parachuted into the stadium.
Oh, my God. That's unbelievable. I think that's
So
a
when
crime,
I'm watching
it,
I'm like, oh, my God, that's Sergio. And I couldn't believe that. I forgot to tell you that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I came up with a few things I wanted to get to. First, we talked about the new Timothée Chalamet movie about Bob Dylan that's coming out called A Complete Unknown. It's directed by James Mangold. Here's what I'm curious about. Number one, what do you think the budget was for this movie?
You always ask me these questions.
I just take a flyer. Take a flyer. The budget, $30
million.
Okay, it's $50 million. Now, I think that is too big a budget for a movie that is going to be this specific. And this, because, I mean, for me, Dylan is an acquired taste. I've never been a big Dylan fan. Oh, are you going to?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Never been a big Dylan fan. I've always been part of the joking of the nasal, the Dylan voice. I've always been that, which maybe you think is hacky. But I just never got it. Now, generationally, I'm a little bit different. I grew up with 70s music and not 60s music, so I'm sure it rings more true to you. But do you think, to me, this is kind of an art house movie, and $50 million is a pretty big budget.
Where's the $50 million going? I mean, how much is going to actors? How, director? I mean, I don't know.
So Timothée Chalamet is only getting $6 million for this movie.
Oh, okay.
He committed to it before Dune and before Willy Wonka, which are two gigantic hits. But apparently there are expensive effects. I think it's like crowd stuff, right? It's music rights.
Right. I was going to say music rights for sure.
That's where the money goes. But I'm sure I don't know. Do you think he'll be good?
I think he'll be good.
He's good in the trailer.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great actor, and I just have to back up because...
Oh, you're going to talk about Dylan. Go ahead.
No, just because, like you say, it's generational. I have an older brother who's 11 years older than me, so when I was growing up, there was not a day that went by that Bob Dylan was not playing in my house.
Really?
Yes, and, as a lyricist, I mean, who wrote better lyrics than Bob Dylan? So maybe you weren't crazy about his singing voice, but there was not a more important artist writing music, I think, ever.
Okay, but when did Dylan peak? What was his peak? 70? 71?
Probably early 70s, I guess.
So I mean, I was 5-6 years old.
No, so I understand why you don't.
Oh, okay.
And probably for the same reason I don't like a lot of newer music because it doesn't resonate with me.
Right. Right.
Like I'm not a big hip hop person. I'm not a rap person.
Wait a minute. I'm surprised you're not a big hip. I always thought of you as hip hop Sue.
Oh yeah. I have a boombox. I still have one in my house.
You still have a boombox. Good for you.
Yeah, it's how I used to go on the subway in New York.
Right, exactly. So, anyways, I find that interesting. It's coming out for the holidays. We'll see if it can make the budget back. By the way, Mangold's other musical biopic, Walk the Line, did $186 million. So maybe there's money in this. I wanted to mention, do you know who David Zaslav is? He's the new CEO and president of Max and HBO and Warner Brothers. I guess it's Warner Brothers Discovery.
I don't.
Okay, all this guy's doing is cutting everything. At HBO, at Max, at Warner Brothers, CNN. I don't understand it. Let me tell you this. So I've always
he can have a job in the new administration.
Yeah, right. So I've always been a very big Clint Eastwood fan. Clint Eastwood, both as an actor and a lot as a director. And he made a movie. This is his 40th and final movie. It's called Juror Number 2. It was released. The reviews are 96% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
Mm-hmm.
It got a release in 50 theaters. That's it. It's not going to expand. There's not going to be more. And the idea is what the Zaslav guy is doing is he's taking these movies like Juror Number 2. He's given them just a modest theatrical release. By the way, 50 theaters is nothing. And then they're going straight to Max with the movies. And I'm like, this is Clint Eastwood's 40th movie. He's done most of them with Warner Brothers. He's owed the respect of a wide release for his final movie.
And if you look at the caliber of the films that he's made and the awards that he's garnered, and not only he as a director, a few of his films, he won Best Director, he won Best Picture, it won Best Actor, Supporting Actor, Editing. I mean, it's just insane that just that alone, they do not respect. He's 94 years old.
Yeah, I know, 94 years old, last movie. I mean, come on, give the guy a release. I will watch the movie when it gets to Max, which could be any minute.
This guy needs to be slapped.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of people want to slap him because he's slashing jobs and shows and all that kind of stuff over there. So remember that name, David Zaslav. If I was to ask you just randomly, best Clint Eastwood director performance, where would you go?
Oh, boy.
It's really tough.
Mystic River?
You know what? Mine too. Mystic River. That movie is haunting.
I saw it again not that long ago. What an amazing movie from top to bottom. I mean, just those performances. Tim Robbins. Oh, my God. I mean,
Sean
everybody.
Penn. Oh.
Yeah.
There's a scene in that movie that just sticks. Sometimes there's a scene in a movie that just sticks in your head. And when I think of Mystic River, I think of the scene where Sean Penn finds out that his daughter has been murdered. And there's a shot that starts out on him, and then it's a crane shot, and all of a sudden it's coming up and it's like over him and all the people, and you see him trying to get. It's such a disturbing, sad image, but it sticks with me from that movie. That is a really powerful film. I'll tell you a little story about this. So when I was running the art house movie theaters in Palm Springs, the Cinemas Palm d'Or, we were not getting any movies, but we would get movies what was called on move over. So after it played our competitor, we would get it. So Mystic River played for like 3 weeks over at our competitor. We moved it over afterwards for its Oscar run. It ended up running for about 6 months. It was such a big movie. So many people. And remember, that was a big Oscar movie too. That was a big one. The other movie, Unforgiven, is an incredible movie. It's sort of a revisionist Western where Eastwood's character looks back on all the bad stuff he's done over the years. So there's sort of like this meta kind of Clint Eastwood looking back over his roles too. It's really, really powerful. And Gene Hackman is just
Best Supporting Actor.
Best Supporting Actor. Gene Hackman, I happened to look it up yesterday, 94 years old. He retired. He says the roles are no good anymore. There are no good roles for a 94-year-old. Clearly not directing, because you're not even going to get a wide movie release.
I just think about that. Just think of the work that goes into directing a movie. Just think about the work that goes into just getting up in the morning at 94.
Yes.
I mean, it is just, wow. I mean, I just marvel that this guy still has it. And I bet you it's a really, really good movie, because he doesn't make bad movies. I mean, $1 Million Baby. I mean, he just does not make bad films.
Yeah, even the ones that aren't great, like B-level Clint Eastwood. Like, I love the movie Hereafter. I don't know if you've seen it with Matt Damon.
I didn't see Hereafter.
It's about a flood and the survivors of a flood. I mean, he's just made such an amazing, eclectic bunch of movies he has made in his career. 40 movies as a director. Congratulations to Clint Eastwood. See you on Max. See you on Max, old man.
Yeah.
Are you going to watch it?
Am I going to watch it?
Yeah.
Of course I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, I want to see it. I want to see
yeah,
what the
absolutely.
40th movie looks like. Hey, I wanted to mention, if you are watching right now on YouTube, we love you. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave us a comment or a review or a show idea. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, subscribe to the show. Big points if you leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And if you got a friend that would appreciate the Culture Pop podcast, you know who they are. Tell them more about it. We're always looking for more viewers and more listeners. All right, really cool guest today. He is a Broadway legend for both of Lin Manuel Miranda's masterpieces, In the Heights and Hamilton. On television, he's appeared on shows like Bull, The Good Wife, Person of Interest, Nurse Jackie, and Just Like That, and so many more. His new project is the beautiful coming-of-age movie, Boundary Waters. It premiered at the Woodstock Film Festival, and it will be part of the Dances with Films Festival in New York as it continues its festival run. Christopher Jackson joins us. Chris, thanks a lot for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We're big fans. I definitely want to get into Hamilton and In the Heights, which are two of my favorite shows of all time. But let's start with Boundary Waters. This is a really sweet coming-of-age movie. The story of a boy named Michael and how he handles it when he learns something terrible about his mom and the way it impacts him and his friends. I love this movie. It reminded me of being like a little kid and overhearing my mom and dad talk about stuff that they didn't want me to hear, and what it's slowly like to emerge into that grown-up world. What drew you into this movie?
Well, first and foremost, Tessa, called me up. She and I got to know each other on the set of Bull. She would come and for several seasons direct a couple episodes. And
this is Tessa Blake, by the way.
Tessa Blake, I'm sorry, our director. When you're doing an episodic, you're making the donuts. It's a lot of times it feels like that. While we had a lot of fun on the set, it just, you spend more time kind of hiding from the sun and telling a different story every week. Tessa always came in so prepared and was so engaging as a director. For us, it was always a breath of fresh air when she'd come, and we were always really excited to work with her. And that's where she and I, developed a friendship. She called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I've got this amazing story, and I would love for you to be a part of it." I was like, "Yes, and you can tell me more about it later," which she did. And I read the script, and it was a really beautiful story. It was my first time like going out on location to shoot a film. We were in Ely, Minnesota, and you could spit and hit, from one end of town and to the next. But the community was really, really engaging and warm and welcoming of us, and we had a great time filming. The story itself reminded me a lot of those movies from back in the 80s, those coming of age stories. And while it dealt with some really difficult things that happened in the film, seeing it through the lens of young Michael was really beautiful. There's a lot of innocence, sort of sorting through all of the things that the choices and the way that you deal with all of these things, and trying to establish where it's safety and how we relate to older generations, and then how you kind of work those things out with your group of friends, which is something that I obviously related to a great deal. So it was a fun, really heartwarming experience, even though it was, some days were a little bit more difficult than others, just because of the subject matter. But we all kind of took on this sort of big brother, uncle, auntie role with the kids. Loved watching them discover themselves, and while they were making this movie, and we all had a really, really good time building this family, and then telling the story.
Yeah, I really love the multi-generational relationships The relationship Michael had with his grandmother. I didn't grow up with my mother's parents passed away before I was born. So, and my dad's parents passed away when I was very young. So I never got that relationship as a kid. But what I marvel at is how kids today are just so in tune, the conversations that they have, and you just think about the world, how socially active kids are. I know you have children. Do you find that with your own kids, that they're just so much more aware than we were when we were children?
Well, I think, as with all things, information without context can be a fairly dangerous, occurrence. And I think when you're younger, a lot of the things that we know ourselves as adults, we all learned in kindergarten. Like life is rarely binary. There's rarely a right and there's rarely a wrong. Kids seem to have access to that because they're in the process of learning what that means. The complication comes as you get older, what that right requires, right? It's making the choice that is bigger than yourself. It's grappling with the idea of safety and security, but from completely different context. So as with my kids, it's one thing to, read a headline, but without context, it's very difficult to understand how to process that. And then how those developing feelings take shape and how they're expressed. And I think that's obviously, a huge part of this movie. Yeah.
One of the things I thought about as I was watching it was sort of the burden of keeping a secret as a kid, keeping something quiet. And I grew up in a pretty dysfunctional house. And one of the things that we were told always was to keep everything a secret, keep it internal. Don't let anybody know what's actually going on. And that's a lot of weight to have on a kid's shoulders.
It's a tremendous amount of weight. And we often know that those types of things never really work out very well. I was a pretty expressive kid. I found, I found like my mom would tell you, I didn't keep my mouth shut about anything. But I found that like the only safety and security came with conversation. It came with understanding. And I was fortunate enough to have my mother. I was fortunate enough to have my godfather, my pastor, and my coaches, and being able to have multiple sounding boards is a great way to be able to deal with the 50 feelings that you have around any one particular subject. It becomes a really, you find security in that. And so many young people, hell, so many adults don't have that kind of access to being able to, having an idea is not a dangerous thing. Being able to express it shouldn't be, and sometimes it is. It's a lot of things to navigate especially for a kid who's Michael's age.
I didn't grow up in a very small town, and I look at a film like this, and it's kind of like a double-edged sword to me. There's a coziness to it,
Sure.
and then there's the intrusiveness of everybody knowing everybody's business. How did you relate to that? How you grew up?
I grew up in a town about the size of Ely, a small town in Southern Illinois, Cairo, Illinois. Fortunate for me, my mom was a school teacher there my entire childhood, and so I knew everybody. And if I didn't know them, they certainly know who knew who I was and knew who my mother was. So it created a sense. Watching the movie and seeing the kids sort of move about town. It reminded me a lot of my growing up. I didn't have to be home by the time the streetlights came on. There was no place I could go that I wasn't being watched. And so there was a certain freedom in knowing that I was constantly being observed. It kept me from kind of getting into a lot of trouble, but also I didn't feel as if there was ever a door I couldn't knock on to ask to use the phone to call my mother. If I thought we were in some kind of a situation that I needed help with. So, and I grew up in a town, and every kid had that experience, and so that part was really, it was a fun, it kind of got me go down memory lane a little bit, but it's something that's very familiar to me. And that's kind of, my generation is also, like Adam came on television and changed all of our lives in a matter of 12 hours. We stopped being able to just be sent to the grocery store 10 blocks away. We stopped being able to, we stopped assuming that strangers weren't there to harm us.
Right.
It just kind of broke the veil of blissful ignorance in a certain way. And I think it made everyone hypersensitive to how dangerous the world sort of could be. And I remember that Sunday night when it came on and how the world was different. My grandmother, who was from 2 generations before me, she changed her attitude. She was now walking us to the corner when I wanted to go play with my cousins.
Right.
Within view of the house. So it was a whole sort of different awareness, and to see these kids, move around through their neighborhood and biking where they want to bike. It kind of takes you back to those halcyon days where the world maybe didn't seem so dangerous,
Yeah, right. So I want to go back to it's Cairo, Illinois, right?
Cairo, spelled Cairo, but pronounced Cairo. Yeah.
Yes. So you have talked a lot about a teacher you had there named, I think it's Lin, is it Stevenson?
Stevenson, yes. Yes.
And she really sparked your love for acting, and teachers can do that, send your life in a different direction.
Sure.
What made Lin Stevenson so important to you?
She was, my mom taught at the high school. She was a contemporary of my mother, a co-worker, and they became fast friends. I was never shy about, getting up and singing a song at a talent show, or that was just kind of what we did. I grew up in a funeral home. The earliest part of my life, my grandparents were funeral home directors.
Wow.
And so they weren't shy about putting me in a suit and having me sing, a hymn for a funeral if they didn't have somebody to sing. And so it was just something that I was always very comfortable with. I think that, Ms. Stevenson sensed that there was more there, sensed that there was more than anything a need to just have a reliable form of expression for me. I was a real angsty teenager. I didn't know that reading a play for the first time would literally change my entire idea of what the world would be. It was the crucible of all things.
Huh. Wow.
Real light reading, it happened to coincide with a history chapter that we were on in school. I felt like, history was something that I always had a very deep appreciation and love for. I kind of saw the drama and the soap opera of it all in my history lessons. So for me, I think the confluence of it, the Salem witch trial, and this amazing writing and these characters, it was so compelling. Miss Stevenson being, an acting teacher and someone in the arts, we didn't have a theater program in our high school. It was too small and not enough interest, but we did have a speech and drama team. And couple that with my, competitive nature, being a high school athlete, I was like, yeah, I want to try this. And my first competition, I got second place. I was like, oh, well,
what category were you in?
Dramatic interpretation. So you basically would embody 2 or 3 characters at once. And
yes, I did exactly the same thing. I did exactly the same thing. It was so cool.
I was hooked. I did the jail scene with Danforth and John Proctor and it was Abigail, I think. Yeah, his wife. And so that was everything. And then I couldn't wait for the next year. I couldn't wait for the whole thing to start up again. And then there were some community productions that coincided with that time, and I participated in those, and the rest is like, well, there it was.
By the way, my big one was Master Harold and the Boys by Athol Fugard, and it was an amazing experience to be able to do that.
No doubt. Blood Knot's one of my favorite plays. I read that in college, and that made a huge impression on me.
So you were pretty young when you went to New York. What went on that made you say, I'm going to New York? Did you know anybody there? Were you lined up for an audition?
I didn't. Miss Stevenson gave me a brochure for the American Musical and Dramatic Academies, AMDA, here in New York. And she said, they're having auditions in Chicago. You should go audition. And I thought, road trip. So my mother and I, who played, consequently was like my own accompanist. She's the only person that ever played for me until I got to New York. She played piano. We went to Chicago on a cold snowy February morning and went to the Hilton and auditioned in this big ballroom. And I thought it was a great experience. And then nothing. I heard nothing. And then in May, I come at home and I get a phone call, and it's the admissions coordinator from AMDA, and they were like, "Well, we never heard back from you." And I mean, "What do you mean you never heard back from me?" She's like, "Well, you were accepted." I said, "I never got the acceptance letter. I didn't.
Oh,
I didn't know
wow.
what. Wait a minute. I'm going to New York." I jump in the car, I race back to the high school. My mom was still there, cleaning up, and I said, "Mom, we have to talk." And so we, in the course of a few days, had the conversation, and then later that summer drove out to the campus. And I think once my mother got a sense of okay, everybody in the city is from somewhere else. Everyone is not just sort of here hanging out in the corners. Like, people are on their way to and from where they have to go. And once we got a sense, that my world was going to be about a 10-block radius in New York City, it felt more manageable. It felt less like the most daunting, city, and less like Sodom and Gomorrah, if you will.
Yeah, right.
We took a tour of the school. The structure of the school felt sound, and the people that we met were fantastic. And then through some nudging from mentors and other people who were close to my mom and I, and realized that I was bound to try this. She relented, and I showed up a few days after my 18th birthday, and class, routine, learn the subways, figure out where not to eat if you want to have a little bit of money, and keep a little bit of money. But it was, every day was breathtaking. Every day was extraordinary. There was a vibrancy in just the air. The air felt electric, and it was still early enough. It was 93. It was still early enough. If I needed to go to the library to read a play, I needed to go to the library to read a play or learn a piece of music. Like, it was all very analog and very hands-on. And I felt like by the time that 2-year program was over with, that I had learned enough in school to know being an artist is never knowing everything. Being an artist is looking for the things that you don't know. And so that's really what I try to do every day. I try to wake up and learn something that I don't know, play something that I've never played, learn a piece of music that I've never heard, watch a scene or watch a film that I didn't know existed before I went to sleep. And that is the thing that fuels, and has fueled my career. Theater is a beautiful testing ground, in that every single day, even though the show doesn't change, the audience is always new. And how you feel and what you bring to it is always different. And it gives you an opportunity, again, to just learn as much as you can, and to stoke that curiosity and to challenge you in every imaginable way. So that's what I love about it.
That's incredible. So here's the thing. I'm a huge Broadway nerd. I was waiting to get to this part. And so I saw you as Benny in The Heights. I saw you as Washington in Hamilton. I feel like, because In the Heights came first, I felt like I sort of discovered, this is just my feeling, I sort of discovered Lin Manuel Miranda before he became the guy that did Hamilton. And I think In the Heights is a really important show, especially for now, because we've got these divided communities all over the place. And here is one neighborhood where everybody cares for each other, looks after each other. And that's something that unfortunately doesn't exist for a lot of people. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think that the world has become, and New York in particular, has become far more insular than it was at a certain time. I talk to lifelong New Yorkers, people who've been here for 50 years. I can talk to what we call original Brooklyn residents. That idea of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, where life was really lived out on the stoop. It was lived at the bakery. It was lived at the grocery, at that corner market. There's a beautiful thing that happens here that I don't think happens pretty much anywhere else in the world as far as cities are concerned. because everyone is from somewhere else. And I think that, if someone were to ask me about Lin's work, it would certainly be that. He has a keen insight and interest in how the worlds of people's buildings and those stoops, how they intersect, where they intersect, the importance of the neighborhoods that they intersect in. Running into someone is different in Washington Heights than it is in Bed-Stuy. It was different 10 years ago and 15 years ago and 20 years ago and 30 and 40, the tone of the type of expectation that people wake up with it's just simply different because life is always evolving and even faster in New York. And I think that his work becomes a real study in that, especially the stage work and the theater presents a real, a real-time experience in unlike any other medium that he or any of us are working in, for sure.
Yeah, that feel of that neighborhood, where I grew up, you could just go to a neighbor's house and you didn't have to knock on the door, you didn't have to call somebody up. And
Sure.
now where I live in Long Beach, California, and my area, my block is so much like that. And I love that so much.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I know everybody. Everybody looks out for one another. My neighbor she's an older woman who lost her husband not that long ago. She calls us whenever she needs anything. If we go shopping, we buy things for her. It's so cozy and familiar to me. And it's kind of inspiring,
Sure.
to have that now in this time in my life.
Well, it's a privilege to be able to do for others. It's a privilege to be able to have a ready-made reason to express generosity, right? Like the idea of being an actor or an artist it's based around, first and foremost, generosity. I've had an idea, I've put it on paper, I've recorded it, I've painted it on a canvas, but it's all meant to share. It's never meant to just simply stay, be kept to yourself. And, when you can walk out the door and when you can get a call from a neighbor and do something for them, what better feeling is that? I was just so weird. I was driving my daughter to a Halloween night hang, and on the way, I passed a lady who's obviously 7 months pregnant, holding a 2-year-old, just on the side of the road. I'm like, stopped. I was like, I'm going to drop my silly 15-year-old teenager off, dressed in this crazy costume, and said, I'll be back. Give me 5 minutes. And I got to change her tire. I felt so good after doing that. I was like, how many opportunities do you have unsolicited to simply do something nice for someone? That it's not about what I do. It's not about being recognized. It's none of that. It's really about like, how can I give you a hand in something? And to be able to like participate in that, it's good for our souls. It's really, really good for our souls. Like, I want people to see this movie. It's good for your soul. It's something that we have done, that we've offered, that talks about a series of difficult progressions that this young man and his friends are going through and his family's going through. But it's something to give you an opportunity to feel something that maybe you didn't feel when you woke up this morning.
Yeah.
And it offers you a way in and a way through and a way out. And that's the kind of art that you get to make. When you're fortunate enough to get to make it, it can really change you.
Yeah, and it's a great lesson for kids to grow, and how lucky for kids to grow up with that selflessness, that kids at a certain age usually don't innately have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you are now one of Broadway's great leading men. I think you did a PBS special. Is that true?
Oh, that's true. We filmed it last winter. I didn't even know it was coming on.
Yeah,
it aired.
It's coming out on PBS.
It's about to air,
It's you, it's Christian Borle, it's Jacob Gutierrez, it's Matthew Morrison, it's Andre DeShields, who is just incredible. Talk to me about the special, and when you hear that, because it's called Broadway's Leading Men. When you hear that, how do you feel?
Humbled. I've had a chance to see most of the men on that stage, and they're all incredible. And company is always welcome. It's nice to be in that number. It's nice to be able to just to perform. That weekend was particularly special because it was the first trip that my daughter and I went on by ourselves. So she got to hang out backstage and goof off with the guys like we do if we're doing a show together. But anytime you get to stand shoulder to shoulder with some of the greats of our age it's an honor. I'm just gratified that I'm still here. I'm gratified that I, got another chance to stand on the stage and sing. And my lights are still on, and that's a beautiful thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. But if you're doing it right, you get to do it for a long time. If you're fortunate and you try to work the right way, which is what I try to do. And everything that I've been able to do is simply a reflection of everyone that has taught me something and shown me how to do something better and helped me when I was going down the wrong path and help that correction. Mine has been a very full life. I'm very, very fortunate.
Yeah, you're like a quadruple threat. You were composer for Sesame Street, and you wrote a song that I listened to last night, where will.i.am that you did. What a lovely song! I mean, you're so my hero. I mean, that would be one of my dreams, is to be on Sesame Street. It just looks like such a blast. How did that composer position come to you?
I started writing songs about 3 days after I got to New York. We had practice rooms with pianos at school, and I had to have movie money or money to go to shows. I had a piano and time, and I stopped taking piano lessons around 11. It's one of the greatest regrets of my life. And my mother warned me at the time. She's like, one day you're gonna wish that you played. And now I play every day as a matter of like keeping myself fed and my children with coats on them. I've been writing music for forever. This is just sort of a super example of how if you wake up curious and you wake up with a yes, it'll find you. What you're supposed to be doing will find you. I met Lin in 2002, Lin and Tommy and Bill Sherman, from the In the Heights read-throughs and workshops. We developed a friend who, Anthony Misiali, who started one of the founders of Freestyle of Supreme, our improv troupe. We started doing those shows. And from there, while Lin was writing In the Heights, we traveled the world doing comedy festivals. So we went to Edinburgh for the Fringe, and we went to Melbourne for the Comedy Festival, HBO Aspen Comedy Fest. We started going to all of these comedy festivals after we formed the show, did an off-Broadway run. Through that off-Broadway run, one of the exec producers from Children's Theater Workshop, Television Workshop, came to one of our shows and said, hey, we're going to bring back the Electric Company. Can you come and do a proof of concept? Let's all work on something. So we filmed the proof of concept. Well, In the Heights opens. Well, now the Electric Company is a show. So they tapped me and Bill Sherman and Tommy Kail to be the co-music supervisors for the show. So we're essentially writing them a new musical once a week while I'm doing 8 shows a week in the Heights. Oh. I was laying demos at intermission because we write 3 or 4 songs a week for the show. After that, Bill Sherman gets tapped to become the new music supervisor for the big show for Sesame Street. From there, I just moved right on over, started writing music and composing songs for Sesame Street. I wrote What I Am on the steps of my childhood home while I was visiting my family, but we had to turn the song around. And I'm literally sitting there on the steps that, of my childhood home, writing these lyrics, demoing the song in my bathroom, send it back. will.i.am records it. And then, 9 months later, we win an Emmy for it. It's just sort of, there's no limitations. There really aren't. I've said yes to things and I had no idea how I was going to pull it off, but you figure it out. And it's that spirit that embodies, I think, our entire crew. We've always just said, yes, let's make something new. Yes, here's another opportunity. Yes, this can be great. And while I wasn't, catching a cold as an actor in certain sort of seasons, writing music fulfilled. It scratched every itch that I possibly had. It put some money in our pockets and allowed us just to get to the next day.
Yeah.
And do something just stratospheric. In the meantime, that the tens of millions of times that song has been played. I mean, it's a beautiful. Yeah. It's a blessing. It's really been a blessing.
So last thing, I want to ask you about Boundary Waters and Carol Kane, who is just an absolute legend. I was looking back, six decades she's been doing this. Some of these roles, from Annie Hall to When a Stranger Calls to Hester Street. I mean, it's just her. What is she like? To me, she seems like kind of an enigma. Like, I don't know what she would be like off camera. What is she like, and what was it like working with her?
I think you know what she's like off camera. I think she's portraying it. If you see Boundary Waters, you get such a sense of her character. She's glorious. She's warm. She's kind. She's whip smart. The most amazing sense of humor. Has a sense of comfort that she brings. Like know-how counts for a lot, and she knows who she is. She knows what she's doing, and she knows that everybody else is. She makes it so that everybody else can be comfortable in their own skin. A hug from Carol. It's like that's home. That's home. She really just infused the entire process. The days that I got to work with her were so much fun. Because she's been there. She's been around.
Yeah.
You just want to sit around and let her tell stories about this experience or that experience or this time. Or she's lived an incredibly rich life. But I think more than anything, the word that sums it up is kindness. She's just kind.
Yeah. That is cool. That is cool to hear.
Awesome. Yeah.
So Boundary Waters, you guys are on the festival circuit right now, and I just heard that you guys are going to be next in the Dances with Films Festival in New York. So congratulations on that. I can't wait till everybody gets to see this movie. I know you're doing festivals right now, but I can't wait till everybody gets to see the movie. It really is terrific, and it's really cool to get you on. Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. Nice talking to you guys.
There he is, Chris Jackson. Sue, I really do believe I discovered Lin Manuel Miranda because I saw In the Heights before I knew anybody else did. And by the way, Chris knew him before he was the Lin Manuel Miranda.
So, are you going to go on a campaign to get it out there that you were the one?
I was the one that said, you know what? This kid's got a shot. This kid's got a shot of making it. And sure enough, there I am. Figured it out. Cracked the code. So Sue, got a little appointment for you to make. Okay. So, everybody does Twitter or X or whatever the hell it is now. There's a new one. It's called BlueSky.
I knew you were going to say that.
Now, have you gotten onto BlueSky yet?
I've been considering getting off of Twitter because I'll never call it X, and go to BlueSky because a lot of my friends are jumping ship.
I am on BlueSky now.
Okay.
So same handle at Venice Mase, VENICEMASE. So if you're on BlueSky, and it seems like a really nice, warm, friendly place.
It's one of my favorite Allman Brothers songs. Blue
there
Sky.
You go. Yeah.
So how could you go wrong?
So check it out, BlueSky, and Sue, when next show, we'll get your BlueSky handle and make sure everybody knows it.
So are you going to stay with Twitter? I guess you have to.
I have to.
You have
both.
to for work and stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got to do Instagram. I've got to do Facebook. I've got to do Threads. I've got to do BlueSky. I've got to Twitter. I have to do them all. I have to do them all.
Yeah,
because I'm also an information consumer, right? I need everybody's scoops and stuff that's on Twitter.
Well, I'm on all of them. I don't contribute to Threads I just don't really
I don't
it.
think Threads is going to make it.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be BlueSky instead of Threads.
Is it hanging by a thread?
It's hanging by a thread. Yes, it is. Anyways, if you're out there on your following on BlueSky at Venice Mase Sue will be on there very, very soon. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. We appreciate all of you. See you next time on the Culture Pop Podcast.